2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet, and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean, and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
Oh.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Morning, 9:30 on Thursday, the 14th of November, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. So council tax is going to soar. Back in September, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, had no plans to raise your council tax. But guess what? The bills are set to rise by more than £100 next year.
And find out why action by frustrated pharmacists could impact when you pick up your prescriptions.
A Labour MP wants Gazan families caught in the Middle East conflict to be able to seek temporary sanctuary in the UK, like we did with Ukrainians. Would you welcome a Gazan refugee into your home?
Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson and Elon Musk have now all attacked Essex police for an attack on free speech after they turned up to the house of the journalist Allison Pearson over a tweet she made more than a year ago.
Seemed to me a completely mad overreaction. Whatever it was that I posted a year ago on X, I'm not in the habit of writing anything horrible and inflammatory. If I wrote something that was unwise, I still don't think that's a proportionate response.
And we'll bring you Welsh Labour's plan to make the great outdoors less racist. Their solution, banning dogs. Yep, you did hear that right.
And so Rod Stewart, he's not sailing, he's selling. In fact, he's selling 5 of his sports cars because he's sick to death of the potholes near his home in Essex.
And King Charles is celebrating his 76th birthday today. He's opening 2 new food hubs. And last night he was in attendance at the Gladiator 2 premiere. That sounds like a rather relaxing birthday. Get in touch this morning. Let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. First of the very latest news with Katie Bowen.
Bev, Andrew, thank you, and a very good morning to you. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Chancellor is expected to use her first Mansion House speech today to outline reforms to pensions, telling city bosses she has a plan to boost the economy. Rachel Reeves will reportedly propose an overhaul of Britain's pension fund industry by introducing pension megafunds that could help unlock £80 billion worth of investment in businesses and infrastructure. Under the plans, the reforms will be introduced through a new pension schemes bill next year. Megafunds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds invest in assets that have a higher growth potential, the government said. Pensions Minister Emma Reynolds outlined the plans a short time ago.
Pensions Minister, let me be absolutely clear that it is these 2 objectives that I'm holding in my mind all the time, which is boosting investment in our own economy, but at the same time boosting pension savers' retirement incomes. This is a win-win situation.
Council tax bills in England are expected to increase by up to 5% next April, amid warnings from the Conservatives that local authorities face a £2.4 billion black hole. Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch pressed Sir Keir Starmer to confirm whether the cap on council tax would be increased or not. Speaking after Prime Minister's questions yesterday, the Prime Minister's press secretary told reporters that the threshold remains the same. Families are therefore facing a £100 increase next year. Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, Kevin Hollinrake, had this to say earlier.
Kemi Badenoch yesterday had to tease that out of him, really. Had he really thought about this? So, having said there'd be no tax increases, everything was fully costed and fully funded. Now we realise there's £25 billion of taxes, which really is going to hit working people, and even people who are not working and just buying stuff because things are going to be dearer in the shops.
And finally for now, King Charles turned 76 today, as gun salutes are set to take place in Green Park to mark the occasion. Today is the monarch's actual birthday, following the official celebration marked by Trooping of the Colour in June. And this morning, the royal family posted an image of the King on X. The King is carrying out official duties today, as he is set to visit a surplus food festival and open 2 coronation food hubs designed to bridge the gap between food need and food waste in the UK. It comes as Charles attended the global premiere of Gladiator 2 last night, with stars Pedro Pascal and Paul Mescal. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
You've been smoking.
If you're listening on the radio, it's not Barry White.
Is this Barry White or is it Marlene Dietrich?
I've got a lot going on, Andrew, but I'm fine. I've got my ginger tea. I've got some honey. I'm not ill. I'm fine. I've just got no voice.
Ginger and lemon. Very good for bad throat.
Thank you, Grandma.
And less fags.
I do not smoke. Right.
Now, in September, our Deputy Prime Minister, who also deals with the local the devolved mayors, said there was no plans to increase council tax.
That's right. Well, in another U-turn, your bills are going to go up by more than £100 a year from April.
Let's talk to former Labour Special Advisor and columnist Paul Richards, who is a friend of this programme. Paul, it's only in September Angela Rayner said that, and now we have confirmation from Number 10 yesterday that local authorities can raise their council tax up to 5%, and in my experience, Paul, if they can, they will. And of course, inflation is only 1.7%, so that's more than double the rate of inflation.
Sure, Andrew, but if you look at the things that local authorities actually deliver to local communities, whether it's local parks or schools or in some cases fixing the roads and the bins and all these things, people know that these local services are A, very important, but B, crumbling and stretched. And I think most people would rather pay a little bit more on their council tax and live in a decent community where things work and nothing's broken than have this sort of artificial dampener on the council tax that the previous government installed. So, you know, nobody in the world likes paying more tax, but this is proportionate and it delivers the very local services. It doesn't go into some black hole. These are the things on our streets, in our communities that we rely on.
But why then would the Deputy Prime Minister say only a few weeks ago there were no plans? Is she not on top of her brief?
Well, she's utterly on top of her brief, but I would say that, you know, the circumstances are changing fast, and I think the mess that was left behind is still only just being revealed in terms of the black hole in the public finances. And these council tax increases, which are, you know, usually just year on year, were kept down. I think now we're catching up with that. And like I say, I think if people think that their bins are going to get emptied, it's just going to be a bit better on your streets, then I think most people won't mind paying a little bit more for that.
I think part of the problem, Paul, is that we don't trust the people in power anymore at the moment, and we feel like we might pay our extra money per year, but we just don't trust that it's being spent in the right way, on the right things. And over in America, Donald Trump is talking about, with his efficiency drive, absolute transparency on where every penny is being spent so that people can see it, posted online. Do you think that would be a good idea here?
Well, I do, actually. I think that there is government waste and bureaucratic waste. I don't think I would put Elon Musk in charge of it, but I think it was the Democrats in America who invented this idea of the $400 hammer when it was discovered that procurement rules meant that people were buying a hammer. The state was buying hammers they could have got at Walmart for $5. For $400, and there is waste and that kind of ridiculous thing. So I think across defence, across health, across education, you can look at procurement rules and see if you can make them more efficient and get cheaper value and better value for money for the taxpayer. I mean, this is certainly something that the Public Accounts Committee has been looking at, and it's certainly something that ministers are looking at, because every penny wasted is a penny of theft from a working person somewhere, and government has to spend its money as wisely as you and I do.
Can I ask what you think about the Rachel Maskell MP, Paul? She said that she thinks we should open our doors in the way we did to Ukrainian refugees to Gazan families. Do you think would be public support for that? And maybe even you might be thinking that's something you might do yourself?
Well, I haven't seen the opinion polls on public support, but I can guess, and I'm sure you can too, what the response would be. But I think it's a stupid idea. It's comparing two entirely different situations. And I think if there is, obviously there is a need for support for Gazan refugees and for people displaced. But I mean, for a start off, the authorities in Gaza should look at that. And secondly, the neighbouring countries. What's Egypt doing about it? Why don't they open their border? So I think it's a bit of grandstanding, to be honest. I don't think it's a viable policy idea that would go anywhere at all.
One of our viewers has just got in touch, Paul, and said that the reason, what you won't tell us apparently, the reason we're having to raise council tax is to cover the national insurance raises. Presumably that means with the number of people who are going to be having to lose their jobs and therefore the income reducing for the Treasury.
No, I would reject that too. I think this is about repairing the fabric of the nation. It's about fixing the foundations. And when we say foundations, this really is very local, street level. Everyone in their community knows full well that there are local swimming pools, local libraries under threat, youth clubs and all these things. And a little bit extra on the council tax will help to start to repair some of that damage to the very fabric of our country. And I think it will be welcome. I think people do want to live in a safe, clean, decent neighbourhood where they get on with their neighbours and things work. I think that's a reasonable thing. This government was elected to try and start to do that on a manifesto of change. And you know what? You introduce change, it does provoke howls of outrage from some, and there are always vested interests that don't like it. But that's what people voted for, and that's what this government is trying to deliver.
It's going to mean the average Band D council tax, Paul, will rise to around $2,300 a year. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and like I say, nobody likes paying taxes. But I think with council tax in particular, you do see the results for your money. You can see locally what actually the money is going. I think with things like income tax, it's less clear. And obviously, governments have to spend money on things that people don't necessarily like. But we still have to pay those taxes too. But with the council tax, it really is for the local services that are delivered by your local council. My bins are empty this morning as I was putting the bins out in the freezing cold, and that is a service I'm paying for through my council tax, which I can actually see. And by the time I finish this interview, the bins would have been emptied. It's very tangible.
All right, that's Paul Richards, former Labour advisor in defence of the council tax. So just to confirm that it will be almost certainly your council tax bill could be rising by up to 5%, which would be more than £100 a year.
Anne-Marie, one of our viewers, morning Anne-Marie, says, I said last week, when Labour says we have no plans, it basically means it will happen. Yeah. They are utter liars. Council's remarkably good at going bust. I'd rather have useless, she doesn't use that word, I'd rather have useless services for £100 a year less than useless services for £100 a year more.
Yeah, and I'm glad they're collecting Paul's rubbish, because they don't always collect mine in the North London borough I live in, where one of the MPs I share is Sir Keir Starmer.
It's also the fact that when they take the bins away, I don't know about you, but the rubbish is all over the pavement.
That's the only reason I know they've been.
No, because of the trail of rubbish they leave behind.
Now, up next, happy birthday to His Majesty. He turns 76 today. We're going to be joined by the journalist who knows him better than any. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
In 2020, after almost 80 years, Oxford University's Pitt Rivers Museum removed its famous collection of shrunken heads with sewn-up lips and eyes made by the South American Shuar and Ashwar people. How do museums decide what should be shown and what should be confined to storage? Can controversial exhibits be left on display with suitable contextualisation in captions? Who would want to be a curator facing such controversial questions? For review, I'm delighted to be joined by journalist Eitan Smallman. Welcome to GB News. I think many people, when they hear that we're going to discuss museums or art galleries, think that it's going to be, that wokery question. But it strikes me, and I think it strikes you too, that this is not just about wokery at all. There are some really interesting ethical questions here. For example, I mean, let's start with this one, and there are several examples of it. Should we be displaying human bodies, the remains of human beings? Should we be displaying them in museums?
Absolutely. It's not just the usual suspects, young snowflakes, who are objecting to these things. There are just naturally cultural shifts, and people of all ages and all political persuasions may feel uneasy about displaying human remains of any kind, especially human remains that have been taken against the will of the communities or taken violently. Hilary Mantel led a campaign to remove a 7-foot 7-inch skeleton of Charles Byrne, known as the Irish Giant, from the Hunterian Museum. He had specifically said that he didn't want to be displayed and didn't want to be taken by anatomists, and yet was displayed for a couple of hundred years until a couple of years ago. He hasn't had the burial he requested, but he's no longer on public display.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is 9:45. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So, happy birthday, Your Majesty. King Charles is 76 today. Gun salutes will take place in Green Park and the Tower of London to mark the occasion. Who better to talk to than Robert Hardman, the author of Charles III. Robert and I have known each other for many years. Robert, 76, he's being treated for cancer. How is he?
He's in very good spirits, Andrew. And morning, Bev.
Morning.
He is. I saw him yesterday. Actually, there was a reception at Buckingham Palace yesterday afternoon, which I was at, and I mean, he was in a throng. He loves being in a throng. He loves sort of chatting to hundreds of people at once. Then he went to the premiere of Gladiator last night.
What did you enjoy that, or is that just does he sort of groan inwardly?
Probably not his ideal sort of. I mean, sort of seeing kind of people riding kind of rhinos and this sort of thing, and sort of CGT stuff. Probably not quite his thing. He's probably happier at the Royal Opera House, but you know, he's king. You've got to sort of represent and celebrate and recognise all the excellent things in this country, whether they're up your street or not. But no, he's thoroughly enjoying being monarch. He's obviously had a dreadful year, but I think if we look back to where we were in January and February. Particularly, after that very bleak diagnosis we had, saying, the King's got cancer, and look where we are now. I think things are definitely on an upward trajectory.
Still being treated, but his treatment was paused while he went to Australia, Samoa. Gruelling trips for anybody, but for a man who's 76 and also undergoing cancer treatment, especially gruelling.
Yeah, it was. I mean, to go the other side of the world, but he was adamant that he, as head of the Commonwealth, which he takes very seriously, and he loves, he's very conscious of the fact he's not just king of this country, he's king of 14 other countries, including Australia. So if you're going to the Pacific, you've got to see some of your other subjects. I mean, he'd love to have gone to places like New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, but the doctor said, look, you can't do everything, so you can do some things. So he went to Australia first, then he went to meet the Commonwealth, who were all meeting in Samoa, and because he's there, it always creates a rather more congenial atmosphere, because you've got a lot of politicians in a room arguing about a lot of stuff. These summits can get quite fractious, but he sort of brings a bit of sort of royal stardust, brings a bit of general sort of bonhomie, so the whole thing goes off rather better when he's around.
He already had a pretty full schedule when he was Prince Charles, but on a practical level, how will his life have changed since he became king?
Well, he's actually much happier. One of his close friends said to me, there's a new kind of serenity about him since he's become king, because he no longer has to sort of ask people if he can do things. He's in charge. All those, no one had waited longer to become monarch in history. Yeah. I mean, to become king at 73, far older than any other monarch ever, obviously was a long wait, but he never sought to. He was never itching to get his hands on the levers of power, if you like. I know in the Netflix series The Crown, the Prince of Wales character is sort of depicted as lobbying Prime Minister, saying, come on, can you get my mother to move aside because it's my turn? Never, ever. It never happened. He was incredibly conscientious about not briefing anything about his plans for when he was king, because he knew that as soon as it sort of started leaking out, it would look like he was sort of undermining the Queen. So that didn't happen. But when the day came, he was ready, and more than ready. And I think it's just that sense of, this is what I've been training for all my life, and I'm going to get on with it, I'm going to enjoy it.
How is she enjoying it? Or is she... I'm talking about Queen Camilla, because I'm never quite convinced that that's what she really wanted.
I know. I mean, she didn't sign up for this. No. I mean, next year will be their 20th wedding anniversary, but for most of her life, she hasn't been royal, and suddenly she's been sort of, as it were, thrown into this extraordinary situation first, where they started off, she was known as Queen Consort for the first few months, because to avoid any confusion with the late Elizabeth II, and then after the coronation, now she's formally the Queen, or Queen Camilla. But this year in particular, in those early months when the King was very unwell, she was having to sort of put on a smile and carry on, because she, at that point, nobody knew exactly what was wrong with him. And all the way through, I think, she's been very good at buoying up spirits, at keeping the show on the road. I mean, when she's around, he's just in a happier mood. It's just the way it is. And when you've got a happy monarch, you've got a happy court.
The public seem reconciled to her. They may not. I don't think there's a great deep love for her, particularly.
Oh, I think the people who met her, yeah. I mean, this week, on Monday, she had a very powerful documentary on domestic violence, which is on ITV, which is, I mean, you can see it on Catch Up. It's it's gritty, but there's a sort of warmth to it, because she's got stuck into this issue. Very not royal territory at all, getting into, the real granular detail of really unpleasant assaults and rapes, and she's sort of taken this on, and it's not just a sort of token thing. I mean, she's been deeply engaged with this subject now since 2010, and listening to the people in this documentary, you realise that how much of a difference she has made in what she's done. So I think there's a lot of respect for her.
It's interesting, Charles, to hear you say that. Sorry, Robert, to hear that Charles is happy. But, of course, in the background, this relationship with Prince Harry, that must be the one thing that maybe when he wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, he thinks, what could I fix? Perhaps it would be
you're absolutely right, Bev. I mean, I think for most people, and particularly now in their late 70s, they'd be wanting to kind of, sort out any kind of loose ends. But it's different when you're monarch. So, in a sense, he's got so much going on that he has these sort of distractions. But, of course, in the back of his mind is the fact that, his beloved younger son is thousands of miles away with grandchildren who he's hardly ever seen. Yeah. And as I explain in the book, it's not because there's some great sort of Arctic freeze. There are very sound reasons why there is a distance at the moment. I mean, it could change. It could all change. But for now, he's got as we know, he's got cancer. Everyone's trying to keep his stress levels down. Harry's clearly got a lot to unpack, a lot he wants to discuss. So the decision is, look, just let's not have that conversation right now. The King doesn't need it. There's also the issue of what does William think, because any solution has to be a three-way solution. But the main problem is Harry is suing the government, he's suing the King's ministers in the King's courts, and you can't have in any way the King being drawn into that discussion, because that would be what's called legal jeopardy. So
just tell us about the book. Is it a recent history?
It's originally published at the start of this year. It's a whole story, behind-the-scenes story of how this reign took shape, right from the moment that the King was picking mushrooms, actually, up at Burke Hall when he got the call, you need to get to the Queen's bedside now, the whole dramatic story of how he became king, what he did, the decisions he's made, all the things that have happened. And then, as I say, we got up to the start of this year, then the book came out, and so much has happened. It's effectively, it's like a new book, because there's all the story of this year, what's happened with Harry, what's happened with Andrew. I mean, huge problems with Prince Andrew, all the inner turmoil around the diagnosis, how he's handled it, how the Waleses have handled it. I mean, we haven't even talked about the Prince and Princess of Wales, but I mean, they've had an awful year, but have treated things very differently. So the book goes into all that, and a lot of the sort of the smaller details. I mean, I love the fact that he's just shortened state banquets. He decided they were going on too long, so he's lopped a course off the state banquet.
They probably still have 9,
but they're down to 4 now.
Oh right!
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Just finally, Robert, we have these gun salutes. We've only got 20 seconds. What is the significance of the gun salutes?
Gun salutes, monarchs and other key royals get gun salutes on key days, royal birthdays, both official and unofficial, and it goes back ages, and it depends where the gun salutes are. Some are 61 gun salutes, some are 41 gun salutes.
Okay.
It's complicated, but they're loud.
Charles III, Robert Harbour, new king, new court, the inside story. Compelling.
Here's your weather.
Thank you.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, some bright spells in the south and the east, but generally cloudier weather for many, and it's going to be increasingly dull and damp in the far northwest. Northwest Scotland, Western Isles, into parts of Northern Ireland as well. We'll see some low cloud gather, some spots of drizzle. Elsewhere, increasingly cloudy skies spread south, but actually after a chilly start in the south, it's going to be a bright enough afternoon, just with some variable fair weather cloud floating about. 12 or 13 degrees in the south, 12 or 13 equally in the northwest, but a very different feel with a lot of low cloud and drizzle. In fact, it's increasingly damp in the northwest of Scotland through the evening, a lot of low cloud covering the hills, some mistiness around the coasts as well. But a contrast for eastern Scotland with that low cloud breaking up over the hills, so some clear spells for Aberdeenshire into parts of Fife, for example. Northern Ireland, likewise, some low cloud and drizzle for the north and west, brighter or at least clear overnight for the south and the east. The south of England, the south and east of Wales, most likely to see clear spells overnight, and as a result, again, temperatures are going to fall away with some frost and fog patches forming by dawn. It's not going to be a chilly start, though, for the northwest, where those spells of rain and drizzle continue, and first thing Friday, 10, 11 Celsius in Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, whilst we'll be looking at the low single figures in the far south of the UK. Some fog patches will continue through the morning in the south, but actually for many across South Wales, through parts of the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, it's going to be a bright day once again with sunny spells. But in the far northwest, increasingly damp and wet weather coming through with gusty winds. That's a weather front that's starting to sink south, which will introduce colder weather for the weekend.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In West Lothian, the A70 is closed in both directions at Harburn after an accident. The Mersey ferry suspended because of fog. On the M6 in Cheshire, the outside lanes closed northbound. At junction 19 at Knutsford after an accident causing delays. On the M56 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 12 and 14 from Runcorn to the Chester services, with delays towards and past there. In Flintshire, the A55 North Wales Expressway is blocked eastbound by an accident between junctions 31 and 32 from Caerwys to Hollywell, causing queues. The M6 in the West Midlands has a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 6 and 7 off Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham, taking 40 minutes in queues from junction 4A for the M42. In Essex, the A113 Ongar Road is blocked near to Stapleford Aerodrome at Abridge for repairs after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
10 a.m. Thursday, the 14th of November, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So pensioners are protesting in the very constituency of the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, as they demand the winter fuel payment cut is overturned. More on that shortly.
Pharmacies are threatening weekend closures over what they call a decade of underfunding. Would you support their industrial action?
And council tax is soaring. Back in September, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, said there are no plans to raise council tax. But guess what? Your bills will rise by more than £100 next year.
A Labour MP wants Gazan families caught in the Middle East conflict to be able to seek temporary sanctuary in the UK. Would you welcome a Gazan refugee into your home? And if not, why?
And happy birthday, Your Majesty. The King is 76 today. He's working, of course. There will be gun salutes in London to mark the occasion.
And if you're sick of the countryside being racist, do not worry. Welsh Labour are going to crack down on the issue by creating dog-free zones. No, we don't understand it either.
And Donald Trump has, as expected, got full control of the US government as he agrees a smooth transfer of power with Joe Biden. Take a listen.
Politics is tough, and it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get.
And I'm sure you've all been waiting for this. The long-awaited John Lewis Christmas advert has been released this morning. Here's a little snippet. not sure whether, like, the fuss around Christmas adverts is a bit outdated these days.
Bit of a tearjerker, that one, though.
Is it? I've not seen the whole thing. We're going to play the whole thing, are we?
I think we are.
I'm going to watch it anyway. I'll let you know what it's like.
I get a lot of shopping at John Lewis, so I never care about the ads. I go there anyway.
Me too. Well, one of our employees here was in John Lewis the other day, and guess what was on on all the tellies in the audiovisual department? GB News. So thank you.
Was it our programme?
It was our programme.
Very good.
Anyway, first, the very latest news with Katie Bowen.
Bev, Andrew, thank you and good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Chancellor is expected to use her first Mansion House speech today to outline reforms to pensions, telling city bosses she has a plan to boost the economy. Rachel Reeves will reportedly propose an overhaul of Britain's pension fund industry by introducing pension megafunds that could help unlock £80 billion worth of investment in businesses and infrastructure. Under the plans, the reforms will be introduced through a new pension schemes bill next year. Megafunds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds invest in assets that have a higher growth potential, the government said. Pensions Minister Emma Reynolds outlined the plans a short time ago.
Pensions Minister, let me be absolutely clear that it is these two objectives that I'm holding in my mind all the time, which is boosting investment in our own economy, but at the same time boosting pension savers' retirement incomes. This is a win-win situation.
Council tax bills in England are expected to increase by up to 5% next April, amid warnings from the Conservatives that local authorities face a £2.4 billion black hole. Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch pressed Sir Keir Starmer to confirm whether the cap on council tax would be increased or not. Speaking after Prime Minister's questions yesterday, the Prime Minister's press secretary told reporters that the threshold remains the same. Families are therefore facing a £100 increase next year. Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, Kevin Hollinrake, had this to say earlier.
Kemi Badenoch yesterday had to tease that out of him, really. Had he really thought about this? So, having said there'd be no tax increases, everything was fully costed and fully funded. Now we realise there's £25 billion of taxes, which really is going to hit working people, and even people who are not working and just buying stuff because things are going to be dearer in the shops.
Elsewhere, fewer pharmacies could be open in the evenings and at weekends from the new year after pharmacy owners voted in favour of collective action for the first time in their history. Some could also withdraw from providing emergency contraception and stop smoking services. The National Pharmacy Association said its members have been forced into an untenable position by a decade of underfunding. More than 3,000 independent community pharmacies in England, Wales and Northern Ireland took part in the ballot, with 97% of those who voted saying they would serve notice on opening hours above the minimum required by their contract. To the US, where the Republicans now have officially won the Congress, meaning they have control of both chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. President Biden and President-elect Trump met in the White House yesterday, with both men promising a smooth transition of power. The President-elect has continued to announce his new cabinet, with Matt Gaetz as his pick for Attorney General and Tulsi Gabbard to serve as Director of National Intelligence. The UK is still yet to announce a new US ambassador. Spain is braced for torrential rain and high winds as a powerful storm is set to hit the country just weeks after flash floods killed more than 200 people in the region of Valencia. A Spanish weather forecaster raised Valencia's warning level to the maximum last night, and other weather warnings were introduced across the country. Emergency services in Malaga have already moved 3,000 people from homes at high risk of flooding. And finally, King Charles turned 76 today, as gun salutes are set to take place in Green Park to mark the occasion. Today is the monarch's actual birthday, following the official celebration marked by trooping the colour in June. And this morning, the royal family posted an image of the king on X. The king is carrying out official duties today, as he is set to visit a surplus food festival and open 2 coronation food hubs designed to bridge the gap between food need and food waste in the UK. It comes as Charles attended the global premiere of Gladiator 2 last night, with stars Pedro Pascal and Paul Mescal. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Emails.
Welcome back. This is Britain's Newsroom Live. I think you just said, is this us? Yes, we're on TV.
Yeah.
Should we see what you've been saying?
This is Bev Turner with her new husky voice.
I know, I'm sorry about
She wants to become the new Eartha Kitt. People in this gallery are saying Eartha who, But she was very...
I think you'll find that's rhyming slang.
Well, she was a very, very sexy actress who once played Catwoman.
Well, OK. Pawkins has got in touch at home when we were talking to Paul Richards earlier, saying he's getting sick of people from Labour still using the phrase working person.
It's so patronising, isn't it?
It is a working person. Here we go. Rod has said, Rachel Reeves, Queen of Thieves, stole from the pensioner and the poor too. Farmers are next and then it's you. You're all being a bit poetic this morning. That's quite nice. I like
And
that.
you know, there's talk that the police are going to stop the farmers and the protests next week driving their tractors into central London. The tractors will be no more disruptive to traffic flows and than these great juggernaut lorries that come hurtling in, delivering to supermarkets.
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
They should be allowed to bring their tracks.
Well, in a sense, this will be the government leaning on the police to stop the farmers coming in, so they're being used as a political tool in the way that Labour said that Margaret Thatcher did that with the police in the miners' strikes. They were accused of being mobilised as a weapon of the state.
Yeah.
Because the farmers should be able to drive their tractors in. They did in France, they did in Germany, and I hope they do here.
Jackson
Well, you're
says,
going to be with them.
I'm going to be there on Tuesday with the farmers, with my microphone. Come and find me, won't you, and tell us what you think. Jackson says we need to get this government out now. Strip Starmer's Sir title. Sir for what he's done. Nothing, just another corrupt title.
You have to wait for an election. You can't kick them out.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
Some by-elections soon, please.
Yeah, well, there will. Well, I suspect there will be one. Can't get into too much detail, but involving the Labour MP in the who had the altercation, to put it mildly. Remember?
The Labour MP who had an altercation.
Yeah, punched a constituent.
Oh,
allegedly.
Of course. David has said, instead of a rise in council tax, public sector pension contributions could be cut. Why do public sector workers get on average 20% contributions by their employers compared to the private sector, who get on average 5%? I reckon at least £25 billion could be saved. This, along with stopping funding of illegal immigrants, stopping overseas net zero grants and charging overseas visitors for access to the NHS could reset the economy. Thank you, David. And Clive says the Pensions Minister said, let me be absolutely clear, in capital letters. Straight away, you know she is going to lie. This government is using pension funds as the next disaster. This story about Reeves is going to force council pensions to merge into 8 £50 billion mega funds. I don't really understand enough about investments to know what that's going to mean.
It's incredibly technical, but I think most people watching, particularly if they're a pensioner, care far more about the triple lock and far more about the fact that Rachel Reeves has robbed 10 million pensioners of their winter fuel allowance of between £200 to £300 a year. Yeah. And on that point, tonight, the Chancellor, she is making what is the key Mansion House speech. It's her first one as Chancellor, and she is going to announce this overhaul of Britain's pensions fund industry.
But in her own constituency, pensioners and the Unite Union are protesting against the winter fuel payment cut.
Let's talk to Michael Agbo-Davison, who's an organiser at the Unite Union and who joins us from Leeds. Michael, morning to you. At the Labour Party conference, Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, led quite a loud, noisy protest in the conference hall. And I talked to her for GB News about the cut in winter fuel, and I asked her then, did she really imagine so soon into a new Labour government that she would be organising major protests up and down the country about a Labour government robbing pensioners? And I guess that's how you feel.
Absolutely, and our members feel the same. It wasn't in the manifesto. The policy itself, it won't achieve, it won't save money. There's no impact assessment being done. Labour's own research from 2017 suggested that withdrawing the winter fuel payment would cause 4,000 excess deaths. They called it the single biggest attack on pensioners in a generation. And the first thing they've done on gaining power was to implement exactly that policy. It's shocking.
Do you think if, Michael, they'd means test it so that only the very richest pensioners had that allowance withdrawn, you would have been able to support that?
I think that there's a principle of universalism with this, and I think it's very difficult to conceive of a way of means testing it which doesn't leave some people falling through the gaps at the lowest end of the income scale. So our argument is keep this as a universal payment, and yes, absolutely, the richest should bear the greatest financial burden. We all agree with that. but that should be done through taxation. That shouldn't be done through withdrawing the winter fuel payment. We're the sixth richest economy in the world. We've got a record number of billionaires. We've got energy companies making record profits. The wealth is there in our society if Labour chooses to tax it, if Labour chooses to take that money from people who can afford it. And I'm sorry, but 10 million pensioners shouldn't be the target.
Look, Michael, I'm not an economist, but wouldn't the easiest way for the government to have done this that you attach the winter fuel allowance to the state pension, and so then it would be, if you're already paying tax on your pension, particularly as a high-rate pensioner, you're going to pay more tax on it? Wouldn't that have been a simple way to do it?
That would seem to be completely proportionate. There's all manner of other ways this could have been dealt with, but just to take it away unannounced at very short notice, people have not had a chance to plan for this. We've got our members on very low incomes in some cases, our retired members, who are genuinely frightened about themselves, their friends, their neighbours, being able to afford heating costs this winter as a result of this.
What are you going to do today in Leeds, which is Rachel Reeves' constituency? Because, of course, she's got her big speech tonight at Mansion House where she's talking about quite a complicated scheme about merging pension funds. What are you going to be doing in Leeds today?
Well, I don't think most pensioners are going to be listening to merging pension funds. They're going to be listening to the Mansion House speech and hoping that Rachel Reeves did what she didn't do in the budget, which was to restore the winter fuel payment. So we're working alongside Yorkshire and Humber Pensioners Convention. We're holding a protest in the middle of Leeds, and we're announcing some polling data that Unite has done through Survation, which finds that even in Rachel Reeves' own constituency, a majority of people oppose these cuts. So her own voters don't agree with this.
Michael, you understand the landscape of, I nearly use the phrase working people better than anybody else now, but the employment landscape, let's say. And we had these figures yesterday about record number of 16 to 24-year-olds not in work, about 850,000 of them. Can you explain why you think that is, why the world of work is no longer appealing to so many young people?
Well, I think it's a bit of a tangent here, but I think the government needs to invest properly in apprenticeships, in trades. We've got a chronic shortage in the building industry, for example. We need to look at redirecting money which is being lost to the public in corporate profits that's going into the bank balances of billionaires. We've got a country which for the last 4 decades is becoming more and more unequal. The very rich are doing very well, and us ordinary working class people are not feeling the benefit of that. The money is in the wrong place. There's plenty of wealth in society, and that could be used to invest in things like quality apprenticeships and trade. So the money is there. That's our big message. The money is there. A Labour government, which was elected promising change, needs to use the resources of our country, needs to redirect that money towards working class people who, let's face it, are the people who keep this country running.
Very briefly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed are you in this Labour government?
Well, I think I'd speak for, and I heard your caller Rod's poem earlier. I think that sums up the feeling from a lot of our membership. It's been hugely disappointing so far. I think we'd send a warning to Labour. Obviously, we're a Labour-affiliated trade union. We're sending a strong message to Labour that they are going to lose votes rapidly. In terms of, we all remember, if I say milk snatcher to you, you know exactly who I'm talking about. These kind of mean-spirited, penny-pinching policies will be remembered the next time people cast their votes.
OK, Michael, great to see you. Thank you for joining us. Michael Agbo-Davison there, organiser at Unite the Union.
Can I say, one of the great reasons I like Mr Thatcher, I was glad she snatched the milk. It was horrible, the school milk. He used to sit in the crate outside,
get warm,
and then the nuns would make you drink it, and it was revolting.
You can still smell it. Stick the straw in the little metal.
Yeah. And it curdled. So we were thrilled.
Yeah, right. GBNews.
Counterintuitive thing.
Flashback. He had a flashback moment there, didn't he? We're running our poll of the day, and today we're asking you, is free speech under threat in Britain?
And this is on the back, of course, of
Allison Pearson.
2 coppers turning up on her doorstep on Remembrance Sunday morning saying that she's under investigation for a tweet. They won't even tell her what she tweeted about.
That had already been deleted, and she posted it a year ago, and she still doesn't know what she'd done.
The world's gone mad.
The answer of the poll will be announced in Martin's show later. Please go to gbnews.com/poll.
Up next, would you welcome a Gazan refugee in your home? No. One Labour MP thinks we should. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Carol Malone and Jonathan Lester here. Andrew.
What did you just say?
He just took the mickey out of your jumper.
What did you say about it? I said you got that terrible jumper on.
No, but the thing is, at least it's a bit of colour, Bev, because you and I look like a black and white photograph.
Did you know we
What do you think
today?
of Bev's Marlene deep voice?
She's warming up with it.
She's taken
no,
up
I'm
smoking.
fine.
I think she's taken up smoking.
You know what? I've just been talking too much. He would say I talk too much every day.
All the time.
My voice goes like that when I've had a go at someone, when I've had a bit of a shout.
Well, that's every day. Well, that's every day,
Oh, no.
Particularly your husband.
And you look like you're going to a funeral, so you can shut up as well.
Listen, can we talk about the fact that we're being told we need to take a refugee into our home from Gaza, Jonathan List?
This is by a Labour MP, Rachel Mask.
Well, no one's telling anyone to do anything for a start, Bev, so let's just before we sort of crank it up to 11. This is a motion tabled by a backbench MP in the Commons to calling for a similar scheme for Gaza refugees that is currently in place or has been in place for people from Syria, and Afghanistan and Ukraine. That is people who are being directly targeted and who don't have a way out for their countries can maybe access a visa scheme for the UK. Now, the UK government, to my knowledge, has not even responded to this, let alone put anything in place. And I would argue that, well, this motion says there's an imminent threat. I'd have rather said the imminent threat was probably 13 months ago when this war started, since when we've had tens of thousands
by Hamas, of course.
Well, it started.
Yeah,
And we're not talking about. We're not.
No, I am.
Yes,
Started by Hamas.
Fine. Yes. Yes. Well, obviously the war obviously predates 7th of October. But yes, this particular assault was obviously triggered by what happened on the 7th of October. But Israeli citizens are not currently considered to be at risk. Israeli citizens are not currently seeking refuge in other places. Palestinians are at risk, as we've seen repeatedly in Gaza, and so anything that gives them the possibility of not being at risk, I would say, would be welcome.
You're saying all that, and that's all very lovely, but the fact is the MPs aren't really rushing to sign the petition. Only 26 of them, so they're not thinking it's a very good scheme either.
Is she going to take any as well, do you think, this MP?
Well, do you remember ages ago when Yvette Cooper said she was going to take a Ukrainian refugee and never did? None of them ever have. All the people who say they will don't do it. But, so this motion was tabled more than a month ago by Rachel Maskell, MP for York Central, and only 26 MPs have signed so far.
650.
Yeah, so and you know why they're not signing? Because if they sign, they may have to take a refugee in.
Yes.
Clearly, they're not going to do that. But, we should heed Nigel Farage's warning. He says, that Denmark took in 321 Palestinian refugees in 1992. By 2019, 64% of them had committed crimes, and their children had committed crimes too. So this will be a worry to people, I'm always in awe of people who take in refugees because you're taking someone into your home that you don't know their history, you don't know who they are and where they've been before. And a friend of mine who is an estate agent did exactly that, and it worked out brilliantly. But sometimes it doesn't, and I think people are
well, if you remember, Justin Welby took in a family.
And throw them out.
And then kick them out.
I mean, look, refugees are people like everyone else. Just because someone is a refugee doesn't make them. It doesn't inscribe them. I just heard the stats. It doesn't inscribe them with virtue. Just as none of us has a virtue, an inherent virtue based on where we come from.
So would you do it, Jonathan? Are you going to consider taking in a Gaza refugee?
It's completely irrelevant.
The answer is no. No, the answer is no.
No, I'm sorry. It's such a way of twisting the conversation.
Why is it?
There is capacity in this country, Carol. There is capacity.
Refugee?
If I had the space and if I had the space and the capacity, of course I would consider it. It's not because I'm against it.
Only consider it.
Andrew, this is not about. This conversation is much more important than individuals. Yeah. It's actually an important conversation. It's an important conversation that you are trivialising. You are trivialising the conversation right now.
It's about individuals who will take in the refugees. And you just said there, and it sounded like you were saying that not everyone is virtuous. So what? People should take in people who are a bit dodgy.
No, Carol, that's not what I said. I said no. That's not what I said. I said that the fact that some people who come to another country in times of need might go on to do bad things within the next 30 years.
No, it was the next 30 years.
Yes, it was the next 30 years. It was from 1992 to 2019. That was the stat that you just quoted.
64%.
Well, that was, but it was within sort of 20. Fine, that's sort of 27 years. Fine. So
how can you come to a country that has given you shelter and taken you in and probably saved your life and then do something bad within that country?
Carol, I can't account for what individual people do. There are plenty of people who come to countries as refugees and then go on to be incredibly model citizens and go on to have glittering careers that they would never have been able to have in their home countries. The opportunities that a country like Britain can afford.
Level, shouldn't these refugees, if they want to escape from the horrors of Gaza, go next door to Egypt? Closer.
And none of the Arab countries are taking.
Andrew, I am not here to defend the Egyptian government.
No, I'm asking you.
I'm not here to defend the Egyptian government.
I'm asking you to think. Do you not think it would make more sense rather than uprooting them from Gaza and all?
That actually comes back to another point. That a lot of Palestinians in Gaza don't actually want to leave because they know full well that if they leave, there is very little chance that they will ever be allowed back. And we have Israeli ministers calling for the resettlement of Gaza because they consider Gaza to be part of Greater Israel. From the river to the sea, some of them might actually say in Israel. So That's why a lot of people in Gaza want to stay put on their land so they can stay in their land after this grisly war ends, if it ever does. And so that's more of a moot point, I'd argue, than what the Egyptian government's saying.
Right, let's look at things closer to home. Carol, Allison Pearson, a fellow journalist, been writing for years, wrote a brilliant book called I Don't Know How She Does It about 22 years ago.
Yeah, great
has
book.
become increasingly political, I suppose you would say, in recent times, posted a post on X, formerly Twitter, and got a knock on the door.
This is
for people like you that
chilling.
regularly
This is all,
write
I mean,
for
I'm
newspapers.
sure I'll be next. Here won't be very far, and you as well. We've all done it. We've all.
I'm already on the watch list.
Oh, are you, darling?
During the pandemic, they might have something on you, but during the pandemic, I'm on.
Yeah, I'm sure they will have. But what I find really insidious about this, apart from the fact they're knocking on her door and not telling her what offensive tweet, which they're calling it. What are they calling it? A non-hate crime incident.
No, a non-crime hate
non-crime incident. So if it's not a crime, why are the police not going to go in the first place? Why would they not tell her the offensive tweet? Why are they not telling her who's complaining about this tweet? Now, what I find about the time they're saying this tweet was posted, Alison was posting a lot about Hamas, and she was posting about the pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Now,
in Britain.
In Britain.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can see what's happened here, can't you? This
Yeah,
would be a pro-Palestinian demonstrator or someone involved who has complained about what she said. So this is a Jewish journalist talking about Hamas and is being targeted. And the police are being complicit in what could well turn out to be anti-Semitism. And I find that really chilling in Britain.
Is Alison Pearson Jewish? I didn't know that.
Yes, she is.
I didn't know that either. We've
I could be wrong, but I'm sure somebody do a fact check. I'm sure.
You know, we
she is.
saw commentators online, or just innocent, not commentators, people using Facebook going to prison after the Southport riots, after the attacks on those girls. But I didn't think they were going to come for the journalist, because once that happens, Jonathan, we are living in East Germany.
Look, I think the first thing to say is that if somebody is accused of something, I think they should be told exactly what they're accused of. That's the bottom line. I have no truck with Allison Pearson. I loathe her views. I think that she said incredibly inflammatory comments. She's talked on this channel about the gradual Islamification of our country, which I thought was completely reprehensible in relation to sort of having sort of Muslim councillors, etc. So she said things that I find absolutely obscene and grotesque.
But she's entitled
to have grotesque views. She is, whether she's entitled to broadcast them freely is another matter. That's a matter of Ofcom. But she's entitled to say what she likes. I don't think those things are criminal per se.
What are you talking about? This was on X.
Right. Well, that's different. I'm saying when you say things on broadcast media.
To free speech, the boss of Essex Police is a guy called Ben Julian Harrington, and he thinks, in his little head, he thinks that this kind of tweet is as bad as rape and child abuse.
Oh, good God.
Now, seriously to God, a man like this should not be in charge of a police force. He has said that it is as bad as rape and child abuse, these kind of crimes. Now, why is that man in charge of a police force? Why is he sending his officers out to arrest people for these kind of things, especially when we're living in a world where we're told the police can't turn out for burglaries, they can't turn out for shoplifting offences, which is costing retailers £2 billion a year? Why do they have two cops turned up at the door?
Because you know why? This is easy.
I actually agree with Carol a little bit on this, because I think that we do have the priorities that have been skewed, and you actually find in this from a lot of ethnic minority people are saying this as well, that you have the police who are actively scouring online social media to try and find offensive comments, such as when a brown woman was who held up a sign about calling Suella Braverman a coconut, for example, was sort of prosecuted, which was like a satirical insult within that community. But what you find is that things are now being weaponised. Things that we used to protect ethnic minorities are now being weaponised against other ethnic minorities as well. So I think the effect I agree is chilling. I think there needs to be an incredibly high bar for prosecution of speech. I think that we can all agree on that.
You have a police force that knocks at your door and does not tell you what you've been accused of. I mean, that is Kafkaesque. And, you know, I don't know, do you think they even knew who Allison Pearson was? I don't know. I mean, how stupid if they didn't, because the Telegraph have led on it 2 days in a row. They've done 2-3 pages inside, as they should, and all the other papers are catching on now. So they've made themselves a massive problem.
They have.
Right, thank you both. We need to tell you.
Ridiculous Essex Police, because they are ridiculous.
Essex Police have said the report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of that investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November the 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter.
And I'm very glad she said no.
Yeah, no, well, no, I read this morning she may go, but what she's done is she's going to take a lawyer from the Free Speech Union.
Very good.
And you know, it's good copy for the Telegraph. And it's good for the rest of us to have a go, because this is appalling.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Carol, Jonathan, thank you so much. Your latest news headlines now with Katie Bowen.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. The top stories this hour. The Chancellor is expected to use her first Mansion House speech today to outline reforms to pensions, telling city bosses she has a plan to boost the economy. Rachel Reeves will reportedly propose an overhaul of Britain's pension fund industry by introducing pension megafunds that could help unlock £80 billion worth of investment in businesses and infrastructure. Under the plans, the reforms will be introduced through a new pension schemes bill next year. Megafunds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds invest in assets that have a higher growth potential, the government said. Pensions Minister Emma Reynolds outlined the plans a short time ago.
Pensions Minister, let me be absolutely clear that it is these two objectives that I'm holding in my mind all the time, which is boosting investment in our own economy, but at the same time boosting pension savers' retirement incomes. This is a win-win situation.
Council tax bills in England are expected to increase by up to 5% next April, amid warnings from the Conservatives that local authorities face a £2.4 billion black hole. Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch pressed Sir Keir Starmer to confirm whether the cap on council tax would be increased or not. Speaking after Prime Minister's questions yesterday, the Prime Minister's press secretary told reporters that the threshold remains the same. Families are therefore facing a £100 increase next year. Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, Kevin Hollinrake, had this to say earlier.
Not yesterday, had to tease that out of him, really. Had he really thought about this? So, having said there'd be no tax increases, everything was fully costed and fully funded. Now we realise there's £25 billion of taxes, which really is going to hit working people, and even people who are not working and just buying stuff because things are going to be dearer in the shops.
And just briefly, the latest NHS figures have been released this morning, and the waiting list for routine hospital treatment in England has fallen to its lowest level for 5 months, figures show. It comes as the average response time for ambulances in England last month was 8 minutes and 38 seconds, an increase on September's figure and above the target response time of 7 minutes. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for your finance report.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2655 and €1.2033. The price of gold is £2,008.30 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,043 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up next, if you collect your hay fever antibiotics prescriptions up at the weekend, find out this could be a thing of the past in the next few weeks. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, some bright spells in the south and the east, but generally cloudier weather for many, and it's going to be increasingly dull and damp in the far northwest. Northwest Scotland, Western Isles, into parts of Northern Ireland as well. We'll see some low cloud gather, some spots of drizzle. Elsewhere, increasingly cloudy skies spread south, but actually after a chilly start in the south, it's going to be a bright enough afternoon, just with some variable fair weather cloud floating about. 12 or 13 degrees in the south, 12 or 13 equally in the northwest, but a very different feel with a lot of low cloud and drizzle. In fact, it's increasingly damp in the northwest of Scotland through the evening, a lot of low cloud covering the hills, some mistiness around the coasts as well. But a contrast for eastern Scotland with that low cloud breaking up over the hills, so some clear spells for Aberdeenshire into parts of Fife, for example. Northern Ireland, likewise, some low cloud and drizzle for the north and west, brighter or at least clear overnight for the south and the east. The south of England, the south and east of Wales, most likely to see clear spells overnight, and as a result, again, temperatures are going to fall away with some frost and fog patches forming by dawn. It's not going to be a chilly start, though, for the northwest, where those spells of rain and drizzle continue, and first thing Friday, 10, 11 Celsius in Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, whilst we'll be looking at the low single figures in the far south of the UK. Some fog patches will continue through the morning in the south, but actually for many across South Wales, through parts of the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East, it's going to be a bright day once again with sunny spells. But in the far northwest, increasingly damp and wet weather coming through with gusty winds. That's a weather front that's starting to sink south, which will introduce colder weather for the weekend.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In West Lothian, the A70 is closed each way at Harburn after an accident causing delays. The M65 in Lancashire is partly blocked westbound between junctions 4 and 3 near Blackburn. It's slow towards and past there. The Mersey Ferry is suspended because of fog. In Flintshire, the A55 North Wales Expressway is closed eastbound from junction 31 at KOS to 32 at Holywell after an accident with queues towards there and delays as you divert. In Suffolk, the A14 is partly blocked eastbound by an accident on the Orwell Bridge between junctions 56 and 57. Just outside Ipswich, causing queues, and in Essex, the A113 Ongar Road at A Bridge is blocked for repairs after an accident near to Stapleford Aerodrome, causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's 10:38. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev.
So we love our independent pharmacies, don't we? But they've been warning the government for months, the previous government too, because in coming weeks, in evenings and weekends, they may not be opening.
That's right. From the new year, this could happen because they're voting in favour of collective action for the first time in their history. Some could even start withdrawing emergency contraception and stop smoking services.
So how is this going to impact you? Let's talk to our favourite pharmacist and health commentator, Thorin Govin. Thorin, you've been telling us for a long time now that if the government don't get to grips with give you a proper financial package, could be your only choice. The worry is, of course, Thorin, if you withdraw services at the weekend and in the evenings, the big supermarkets will just elbow you out the way.
So this is the National Pharmacy Association, and their members, which are about 6.5k members, they have voted in favour of collective action. And this is going to be in the form of, some of them will be reducing the number of hours that they're open, some of them won't be providing free deliveries, some of them will be thinking about the services that they offer. So yes, I mean, nobody ever wants to be in this situation. I think this has been a very hard decision for pharmacy owners. And, we've never had this before. I think we're quite a mild-mannered bunch. We don't really, cause too much fuss. We like cracking on with what we do. So I think this is really unprecedented and says the level of feeling that some of the pharmacy owners are feeling about the pressures they've been under. So that 40% cut in funding over the last 10 years.
But Thorin, just to explain how the system works and how extraordinary it is that the outgoings for the pharmacy for the drugs is now not being matched with the income from the government.
Yeah, so for all pharmacies, some of the drugs that they buy into the pharmacy so that you can come and take those home with you, they are funding themselves because they're not being reimbursed by the government and the NHS. So there's only so much of that can go on. And then obviously we've heard in the last couple of weeks about the national insurance rises. So that's going to be another pressure when there's no more money, to fund that. There's no extra funding that's coming.
Happening, Thorin, at a time when government is expecting pharmacies to take up a lot of the slack caused by the fact people just simply cannot get to see a GP.
Absolutely, and I've been talking to National Pharmacies Association members, and they've been saying to me, we absolutely don't want to do this. Let's hopefully hear something from the government on this, because the current pharmacy contract is still being negotiated at the moment. And what I think is really important is the government need to think in their negotiations. They need to make sure that the GP contract, the pharmacy contract, they're all working together so it works in the best interest of patients. But you can't underfund parts of the system. And I would say, we're picking up a lot of work because we are helping with that access. That access is a key part to me. And we are open weekends and evenings, which is beneficial for patients. But that is under threat, and the fact that this vote has come to a head and they voted in favour says quite a lot.
Thorin, do you know whether these pharmacies, or chemists you might call them as well now, will some of the properties stay open but close their dispensing section? Because of course some of them selling nappies and cosmetics and toiletries, etc. That's how they manage to top up their revenue. Are they likely to stay open but just close the dispensing counters?
So for most of these independent pharmacies, there'll be small independent pharmacies on your high street. And I know you've been championing shopping local, haven't you? And that's so important. So it's likely that given how much needs to be done in the pharmacy, that it will be a sort of all closed. But like I say, different pharmacies will be doing it in different ways. But our pharmacy contract is you've got to be open for 40 hours. So many of them have been opening for longer than that. But it's unsustainable, and that's why they're considering lowering the hours.
And Thorin, we've also seen, haven't we, up and down the country, some small independent pharmacies are just throwing in the towel and closing down.
Yes, we are now at the lowest number in England of number of pharmacies for a number of years. And, this is a concern. If I was, a patient, you want to be able to go into a pharmacy and access advice. And you want to be able to do that pretty quickly and get that support that you need. And I do think we provide an unrivaled service. You don't have to wait too long to see your pharmacist in your community pharmacy for the expertise, and that's available so readily. So I think we need to support our local pharmacies, and hopefully this action is going to happen. But hopefully we'll get something from the government and some promises about what's going to go forward.
When do you think, Thorin, when do you have any indication from Wes Streeting, the health sector, and his officials about when they will resolve the negotiations with your industry?
At the moment, no, and obviously with the things that have been put on hold because of negotiations. So the election, and then obviously there's the budget that had to be thought about. So I think we're all waiting with bated breath. But what we know is this current, and as we've spoken before, this funding situation is untenable, and we are not. This is not a bunch of people who get up and start complaining about things. We do get on with things. So the MPA are asking for pharmacy to be seen to the end of us being seen as a second-class citizen in the NHS, and I think that is something that is reflected from all pharmacy bodies, to be honest.
OK, Thorin, good to see you.
Lovely to talk to you again. That's Thorin Gubbin, the pharmacist. They've got it. These problems are just piling up, aren't they?
It's just awful.
You've got GP surgeries saying because of the hike in national insurance, fewer appointments. So the first Labour budget could lead to fewer GP appointments and more pharmacies closing.
But then I was just thinking what the implications of that would be, because if you can't get your prescription, let's say in the evenings or the weekends, where are you going to get your prescription from?
Right, it's a problem.
It is a problem. And
well, it could be life or death.
Absolutely. The domino effects of this, well, hopefully the government will take it seriously. We need our pharmacies.
Well, I heard Streeting saying only yesterday, I think on GB News, we're in the talks and negotiations. Get on with it.
We've never needed them more than we do now. Right, up next. Are dogs making the countryside racist? This is an interesting one, isn't it? This is a suggestion about having dog-free zones in Wales. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Restaurant St. Bart's executive head chef Johnny Crowe creates ramen with a British twist, using only the finest UK-sourced produce. As the only restaurant in London to hold both a Michelin star and a green Michelin star, St. Bart's emphasises sustainability and the diversity of British ingredients. Johnny joins me now. Johnny, congratulations on having these 2 Michelins. How do you get a Michelin green star?
Probably a better question for the inspectors, but I mean, I think it's down to a lot of hard work.
What hoops do you have to go through?
So I think it's working every day on it. The sustainability isn't something that you just achieve and then therefore you have it and you can sort of relax. It's about every day trying to be better, trying to make a restaurant and a business that is overly sustainable.
So what things do you do to make it sustainable?
One of the main things that we've really tried to do is focusing on British produce, and actually, you know, part of that is about sustainability and food miles. A massive part of it for us was also about sort of helping the British economy and the farming economy and our fisheries as well. But yeah, no, the idea...
You have a lot of farm.
Funnily enough, there's an amazing collective called Shrub Provisions who we use a hell of a lot, who work with farmers all around East Sussex. So it makes a difference from flying it in from Kenya or somewhere else like that. But no, like a big part of it was, one, using British produce to cut down on food miles, but also helping sustain our farming industry.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good morning, it's 10:48. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, we are not making this up. The Welsh Labour government is talking about creating dog-free zones and green spaces to make the outdoors more inclusive.
Wish we had £1 for every time we started a story saying we're not making this up. Well, it comes in response to the Senedd pledging to rid Wales of racism by 2030.
Well, to help us through this extraordinary story is Andrew R.T. Davies, who's the leader of the Welsh Conservative group. Andrew, we've talked about many odd things in our time. Bev and I have read this story about 5 times. What on earth are they talking about? Why do dogs make the countryside or green spaces less welcoming to people, presumably, of colour?
Well, ultimately, this is the madness that is the UK, the Welsh Labour government here and some of the policies they pursue. When instead they should be dealing with the NHS and education standards, they're dealing with this type of trivial stuff that is coming up time and time again, and they're focusing all their energies on.
Do they want to... Yeah. I say, do they want to ban black Labradors?
Well, at the end of the day...
White Labradors, maybe.
Or white Labradors.
At the end of the day, no one wants to see racism in any of its forms in any part of society. But when you see documents like this that have taken a huge amount of government time, you really do understand why people get frustrated with politicians talking about issues that are completely irrelevant to their everyday lives.
What's their logic? How is having a dog-free space going to encourage people from ethnic minorities to go to the countryside?
Well, it's not going to do that, is it? But it's just another agenda item that ticks their woke agenda here in Cardiff Bay. And it's what you'll see in London now, the longer the Labour Party are in power in West.
I don't even understand their logic. The only thing that we can slightly work out from this is that I found on whyislam.org is the idea that to some Muslim people, dogs are, here we go, most scholars of Islam believe dogs are unclean, a minority believe they are pure. Muslims are allowed to kill an animal that is dangerous or vicious. Muslims don't generally have dogs as pets, but might keep them as working animals like guard dogs or sheep dogs. Is that what's underpinning this? Is it that Muslims don't like dogs?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, at the end of the day, there are people in society who have an aversion to dogs, have an aversion to cats, have an aversion to rats or whatever. But you don't put an embargo on people going into parks or with their pets, which is such a critical part of Welsh and British society.
So why?
Ultimately, we all want to get rid of racism out of society, but this is just the typical Welsh Labour government working on agenda items that are completely off people's radar. And what people want the government to do here in Cardiff Bay is actually get them the doctor's appointment that they've been craving for many years, because we've got 24,000 people waiting 2 years or more here in Wales.
But Andrew, I don't even accept the premise that the countryside is racist.
Well, I don't. As a farmer myself, I think the countryside is very welcoming to all walks of life. And these type of documents will call into question the motives of what government is trying to do here in Cardiff Bay by trying to alienate people from the countryside.
Are people openly laughing about this, or are they? Or is it just so ridiculous it's not funny?
Well, I think it's the point you just made there. People think it's so ridiculous, it's not funny. And like you said, you had to read the article 5 times. I'm sorry, I had to read it.
I still don't get it. I still don't get it. I still don't understand, because dogs generally bring people together.
I love dogs.
If you're walking down the road and someone's got a cute dog, sometimes, you know, the kids will want to stroke it and you have a chat with them. How is taking away dogs going to invite more ethnic minorities?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, a dog is a great way of introducing you to a new person as such. And then the first thing someone does very often is go up and stroke the dog and enter into conversation. And as a dog owner myself with 2 dogs, I realise the great effect they have on families and people. So to read this truffle and rubbish that's in this government document is just completely farcical. And I urge the Welsh government to get back on track and start dealing with the day-to-day issues.
Well, I still don't get it. Leader of the Welsh Conservatives, Andrew R.T. Davies, I think the closest we've got to cracking it is that response from the Islam website about Muslims don't like dogs. Let's hear what they say.
And if you are in Wales, let us know what you think about this complete lunacy. You know how to send our messages, and maybe you're a person of colour in Wales. Do you find the Welsh countryside particularly hostile and unwelcoming?
I don't get it. Right, so a Welsh Government spokesperson has said, we are committed to creating an anti-racist nation by 2030. Our anti-racist Wales action plan is built on the values of anti-racism and calls for zero tolerance of all racial inequality.
Where's the dog reference in that?
And also, who's sticking up for the dogs?
Yes.
I think it's discriminatory against dogs and dog owners. It just doesn't make any sense. You better talk.
As we say in the trade, you couldn't make it up. Still to come, we're going to be playing that John Lewis advert. Does this highlight the start of Christmas in your house? Yes, too flipping soon, in my view. Far too soon. It's only in the middle of November. This is GB News on the People's Channel. What's our programme called? Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Sorry about that.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, some bright spells in the south and the east, but generally cloudier weather for many, and it's going to be increasingly dull and damp in the far northwest. Northwest Scotland, Western Isles, into parts of Northern Ireland as well. We'll see some low cloud gather, some spots of drizzle. Elsewhere, increasingly cloudy skies spread south, but actually after a chilly start in the south, it's going to be a bright enough afternoon, just with some variable fair weather cloud floating about. 12 or 13 degrees in the south, 12 or 13 equally in the northwest, but a very different feel with a lot of low cloud and drizzle. In fact, it's increasingly damp in the northwest of Scotland through the evening. A lot of low cloud covering the hills, some mistiness around the coasts as well. But a contrast for eastern Scotland with that low cloud breaking up over the hills, so some clear spells for Aberdeenshire into parts of Fife, for example. Northern Ireland, likewise, some low cloud and drizzle for the north and west, brighter or at least clear overnight for the south and the east. The south of England, the south and east of Wales, most likely to see clear spells overnight, and as a result, again, temperatures are going to fall away with some frost and fog patches forming by dawn. It's not going to be a chilly start, though, for the northwest, where those spells of rain and drizzle continue, and first thing Friday, 10, 11 Celsius in Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, whilst we'll be looking at the low single figures in the far south of the UK. Some fog patches will continue through the morning in the south, but actually for many across South Wales, through parts of the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East, it's going to be a bright day once again with sunny spells. But in the far northwest, increasingly damp and wet weather coming through with gusty winds. That's a weather front that's starting to sink south, which will introduce colder weather for the weekend.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Thursday, the 14th of November, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson and Elon Musk have all slammed Essex police for an attack on free speech after they investigate and turn up to the house of journalist Allison Pearson over a post that she made on X, formerly Twitter, last year.
seemed to me a completely mad overreaction. Whatever it was that I posted a year ago on X, I'm not in the habit of writing anything horrible and inflammatory. If I wrote something that was unwise, I still don't think that's a proportionate response.
Yes, Allison Pearson is being accused of a non-crime hate incident, a very controversial piece of legislation. Might it be outlawed altogether as a result of her tussle with the police? Find out more with me very soon.
And pharmacies are threatening weekend closures over what they call a decade of underfunding. Would you support their action?
And King Charles celebrates his 76th birthday today, opening 2 new food hubs. And last night he was in attendance at the Gladiator 2 premiere. We'll bring you the gun salute very soon to mark his birthday.
And Donald Trump has gained full control of the US government as he agrees a smooth transfer of power with President Joe Biden. Have a listen.
Politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get.
And Sir Rod Stewart is no longer sailing, he's selling. He's selling his 5 sports cars as he's sick of the potholes near his home in Essex. I'm going to get the smallest violin for that story.
Well, he did try and fix them himself, if you recall. And this is the start of the Christmas season because John Lewis has released its Christmas ad. Do you care? Here's a snippet.
Get in touch this morning. Let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/yoursay. First, though, the very latest news with Katie Bowen.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. A very good morning to you. It's just gone 11 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Chancellor is expected to use her first Mansion House speech today to outline reforms to pensions, telling city bosses she has a plan to boost the economy. Rachel Reeves will reportedly propose an overhaul of Britain's pension fund industry by introducing pension megafunds that could help unlock £80 billion worth of investment in businesses and infrastructure. Under the plans, the reforms will be introduced through a new pension schemes bill next year. Megafunds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds invest in assets that have a higher growth potential, the government said. Pensions Minister Emma Reynolds outlined the plans a short time ago.
Pensions Minister, let me be absolutely clear that it is these 2 objectives that I'm holding in my mind all the time, which is boosting investment in our own economy, but at the same time boosting pension savers' retirement incomes. This is a win-win situation.
Council tax bills in England are expected to increase by up to 5% next April, amid warnings from the Conservatives that local authorities face a £2.4 billion black hole. Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch pressed Sir Keir Starmer to confirm whether the cap on council tax would be increased or not. Speaking after Prime Minister's questions yesterday, the Prime Minister's press secretary told reporters that the threshold remains the same. Families are therefore facing a £100 increase next year. Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, Kevin Hollinrake, had this to say earlier.
Not yesterday, had to tease that out of him, really. Had he really thought about this? So, having said there'd be no tax increases, everything was fully costed and fully funded. Now we realise there's £25 billion of taxes, which really is going to hit working people, and even people who are not working and just buying stuff because things are going to be dearer in the shops.
Elsewhere, questions on farming are being heard in the House of Commons this morning, with Environment Minister Daniel Zeichner being pressed on the inheritance tax changes for farmers, as it is reported that farmers are considering strike action. The Conservative MP for Kenilworth and Southam, Sir Jeremy Wright, asked Mr Zeichner if the government had considered a different approach. The Labour minister replied that the changes could help create a generational shift in farming.
Mr Speaker, we've had a lot of debate around this issue, and I'm perfectly happy to have discussions with honourable members about the tax regime in general. But can I just finish by pointing out that one of the beneficial aspects of this policy may be to get the generational shift that farming so much needs in this country. There are many parts to this policy. It is a complicated policy, and in future we will have further discussions.
to the US, where the Republicans have now officially won the Congress, meaning they both control both chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. President Biden and President-elect Trump met in the White House yesterday, with both men promising a smooth transition of power. The President-elect has continued to announce his new cabinet, with Matt Gaetz as his pick for Attorney General and Tulsi Gabbard to serve as Director of National Intelligence. The UK is still yet to announce a new US ambassador. Spain is braced for torrential rain and high winds as a powerful storm is set to hit the country, just weeks after flash floods killed more than 200 people in the region of Valencia. A Spanish weather forecaster raised Valencia's warning level to the maximum last night, and other weather warnings have been issued across the country. Emergency services in Malaga have already moved 3,000 people from homes at high risk of flooding. And finally, King Charles turned 76 today, as gun salutes are set to take place in Green Park to mark the occasion. Today is the monarch's actual birthday, following the official celebration marked by Trooping the Colour in June. And this morning, the royal family posted an image of the king on X. And the Princess and Prince and Princess of Wales wished the king a happy birthday with this image on Instagram. The king is carrying out official duties today as he is set to visit a surplus food festival and open 2 coronation food hubs designed to bridge the gap between food need and food waste in the UK. It comes as Charles attended the global premiere of Gladiator 2 last night with stars Pedro Pascal and Paul Mescal. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearson. My voice has warmed up as the morning's gone on. Have you noticed?
I haven't.
Well, you haven't warmed up, or you haven't noticed. You haven't... Yeah, I think it sounds better now.
She says she doesn't know who Eartha Kitt is. She must do.
I do know who Eartha Kitt is, but I can't think of any of her songs. I won't sing any.
She had a very deep voice, very sexy voice.
Well, let's see what you've been saying at home. Lucia has said you can bet any Gazans housed here would join the weekly pro-Palestine and Hamas marches, shouting "Free Palestine from the river to the sea." With no experience of Western democracy or our way of life, do you honestly think Gazans could remain calm and grateful for being brought to the UK, which they know is an ally of Israel?
Why don't they go to Egypt? Because Egypt hasn't opened the doors to them.
Well, the big question is none of the Arab countries have opened the doors to them nearby. Susan says, I live in Wales and I take my dogs walking on a beautiful beach nearly every day. I think whoever put this dog-free zone bill in must have been dropped on their head when they were a baby. My part of Wales, Carmarthenshire, is a very, very dog-friendly. And Cindy said, I've made more friends whilst walking my lovely dog than any other activity. Is this about Muslims, a Muslim group who do not like dogs and in their own country can be cruel to dogs? I think this is the start of another slippery slope. I pay my taxes and my dog is part of my family, and where I go, she comes with me. The thing is that the Welsh member of the Welsh Parliament who's put this forward hasn't, from what we can gather, we don't know specifically what the rationale is.
There doesn't appear to be any.
Behind, there must be some reason. Maybe are we just terribly naive? This has to be it. It has to be about the fact that Muslim people don't like dogs.
We've asked the Welsh Government to come on to explain it, and we got a statement which was incomprehensible. We read it out, but it didn't mention the word dogs.
But they are going to eradicate racism by 2030.
There we are.
Which is amazing thing
Good
to
for
do.
Them.
Well done.
Admirable and well done.
Anyway.
Moving on. Essex Police have been accused of an appalling attack on free speech after they turned up at the door of 2 coppers at the home of the Telegraph columnist Allison Pearson.
That's right. They're looking into whether she stirred up racial hatred in a social media post on X last year. Earlier, we had the broadcaster Carol Malone in the studio, who said that Allison was Jewish. I actually messaged Allison to find out whether she is, and I don't think she minds us correcting this, because she said she isn't Jewish. She considers herself to be philo-Semitic, which is someone who admires and defends Judaism. And she actually set up an organisation, didn't she, in this country, she's co-founder of the British Friends of Israel.
Yeah, indeed. So Boris Johnson, Elon Musk are amongst those people who've been criticising Essex Police, who have refused to even give details of why they talked to Allison Pearson.
Let's speak now to Olivia Otley, GBNews political correspondent, who's with us in the studio. Olivia, just what do we know about this? Because Alison doesn't even know what it is that she posted because she'd subsequently deleted it. She doesn't know what she posted which caused offence, and it is truly chilling.
Well, it's an absolutely bizarre story. Alison Pearson was sitting at home minding her own business on Remembrance Sunday.
Of all days, Olivia.
Well, exactly. And she received a call from Essex Police, received a visit from Essex Police, saying that she should come down to the station to have a conversation about a tweet that she had posted a year ago, which had been reported as a non-crime hate incident. Now, she asked what the tweet was. Essex Police said that they weren't at liability to say. She said, "Who's accused me of this?" And the PC said, we don't call them an accuser, we call them a victim. So seemingly already presuming her guilt. She is up in arms about this, of course. She's written in the Telegraph, and immediately we've had politicians and non-politicians weighing in, mostly on the Conservative side. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary's weighed in, Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage and Elon Musk too. Now, what she's being investigated for is what's known as a non-crime hate incident. So it came in 2014, and it's essentially where the police can investigate something which isn't a crime, falls short of being a crime, but an incident where anybody can report to the police that they felt as though a particular comment was made in a discriminatory way on the grounds of gender, religion, race, etc. So
sort of bad taste, potentially.
So a bad taste comment, exactly, and it is, up to the accuser to say whether they felt as though that this comment was made because of discriminatory reasons, and they can report those incidents to the police. The whole process is very, very opaque. In 2019, there were 11,000 people were investigated for non-crime hate incidents.
Oh my God!
Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, looked into that and said that she wanted there used to be cracked down on, but in 2023 there were actually over 11,000 non-crime hate incidents being reported. And they are very serious in nature because although you can't be sent to prison for a non-crime hate incident, they pop up in DBS disclosures, etc. So it could mean that someone who has...
Remind people what DBS disclosures.
I forgot what they used to be called.
CRB checks.
CRB checks, where you have to go through for if you want to work with children, for example.
But does this mean the police were involved in looking into 11,000 of these?
11,000.
No wonder we never see a copper.
11,000 of those in a year.
And no wonder they don't come to a shop which is repeatedly being targeted by shoplifters, because they're doing all this rubbish.
Well, this is the controversy that of course, in that time since 2019, while non-crime hate incidents have been on the rise, the number of people who have been actually prosecuted and sent to prison for things like rape has gone down.
Yes.
I mean, it probably a bit glib to draw a direct comparison. Perhaps it's not the same police officers working on them both, but it isn't a very good look for the Labour government.
Terrible.
I'm a bit confused about the timings of all this, because do you think it came into law, did you say 2014?
Yeah.
That's under Cameron.
Was it under David Cameron?
David Cameron was Prime Minister.
OK.
And the Home Secretary, I don't know who the Home Secretary was in 2014, we'll check, but that was the Cameron government. And why didn't a successive government repeal it? Because it won't get repealed by Labour.
But it seems to have every subsequent government has doubled down on it and doubled down on it.
It does seem to be bizarre. I mean, Suella Braverman said that she'd like to see fewer of these non-crime hate incidents.
Theresa May was Home Secretary, of course she was. Of course she was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the woman who got rid of 20,000 police officers as Home Secretary.
I mean, it does seem strange that Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak's governments didn't crack down on this. Suella Braverman said that she'd like to see fewer of these investigations take place.
Should be abolished.
But she didn't actually go as far as to abolish them.
A non-crime
hate incident.
I know.
You use the word hate.
It's something just to use the official definition from the College of Policing. It's an incident where a crime has not been committed, but where it is perceived by the reporting person or any other person that the incident was motivated by hostility or prejudice based on a person's race, including racial group, ethnic background, etc.
So if somebody called me a queer, I could then go to the police and say this is a non-crime hate incident, I want to investigate it.
Well, that might be a crime, actually.
Well, that would be ridiculous as well.
But this is when we get into this sort of criminality of linguistics, we just start to descend down a satirical whirlpool of madness, don't we? I'm just looking at the figures.
Pearson, this is good in a sense because she's big enough to take it, and she will make a very articulate case by word. This is just so poor.
Yeah. So basically, I think my understanding is if your intention is to deliberately stir up hatred, I think that's what distinguishes between it being a crime and not a crime. So if you're attempting to stir up hatred on the grounds of race, religion, sexual orientation, or say hurling racial abuse at football players, those are hate crimes prohibited by law. But the NCHIs, the non-crime hate incidents, refer to non-crimes, comparatively trivial episodes that for the most part the police should not be wasting their time on. Of course. That is the point. So just take it off the statute book. Just get rid of it. Get rid of it. It looks like on average between 2015 and 2021 an average of 66 of these recorded per day. 66 are being recorded every day. So that's not just...
Grow some.
Yeah.
Instead of whinging and wailing, just grow some. It's just a bit of badinage, isn't it? It's just a bit of...
And in the same amount of time, nearly 1 million domestic burglaries without a suspect being identified.
Yeah, well, that puts it into perspective. This is all about two-tiered policing again, isn't it? 2 police officers, Olivia, turned up at Allison Pearson's house on that Sunday morning. 2.
Well, this is the point.
Did they think she was going to attack them or something?
Well, this is the point that Elon Musk is making about the 2-tier policing from Keir Starmer. Obviously, Labour have argued very, very strenuously against that claim and have said that protesters on the right and the left are being treated in the same way. It'll be really interesting to see what comes of this Allison Pearson fiasco because, of course, last year when Nigel Farage was treated, I mean, perhaps in a relatively similar way in the debanking scandal, it did actually end up with the resignation of the CEO of NatWest and Coots. So I think it's possible that we haven't yet heard the end of this.
Nor should we.
Right, OK.
Right, Olivia, thanks. We've got to read out a statement from Essex Police who say the report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed.
An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of that investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November the 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter. The Thorpe police literally came knocking at the door. Well,
It's chilling because we're next.
We are next?
Possibly.
Oh, I thought you said we are next.
No, because... And there's now talk that Alison Pearson will go to the police, but with a lawyer from one of the freedom of speech organisations. I'd have just said flatly no. If you want me, arrest me.
I would definitely go, because I'd want to hear what it is. I'd be so fascinated to work out what it is that they thought I had done.
Would you be allowed to tape it? Because you want the whole thing taped so the world could hear the madness.
Right, we love to hear what you think here at GB News, and we're running our poll of the day, and we're asking, is free speech under threat in Britain? After that interview, I'm not quite sure what other conclusion you could come to. Martin Daubney will announce the result later. Go to gbnews.com/poll.
Up next, we're talking about Donald Trump's new top team and why it's causing a few people to have the jitters. Especially, look at his new Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth's skills with an axe.
Who's going to win this battle of the lumberjacks? That's coming up next. I'm putting my money on Clayton.
That he took part in an axe throwing competition. I guess this was when he was a Fox News presenter. He threw the axe, it went straight over the bullseye and hit a drummer.
And it could have been he might not have been a drummer for much longer because it hit him in the arm. Astonishing. That man is now in charge of the armed forces.
He's a good man. Don't you be put off by that. That's what I say. Right, don't go anywhere. This is GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. He wasn't nearly a drummer.
He nearly wasn't nearly a drummer.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
But it turns out there's a growing number of grandparents who are now taking up the hobby.
And not all of them are male. 7 million gamers are aged over 50, 7 million of them. And we're going to introduce you to one this morning. Her name's Kath Bowie. She's 76 years of age, and Kath has become a worldwide star of the game Fortnite. Good to see you, Kath.
Hello, good morning to both of you.
Morning.
And tell me this, Kath, is Bowie your real name?
Bowie. Yeah.
Bowie.
Yes, it is my real name, yes.
And you do it a Bowie and not a Bowie?
It's a Bowie, yes, definitely Bowie, yes.
Bowie or Bowie?
Bowie.
Bowie.
But that's not what the Jim Bowie was called, or Jim Bowie was called in the Alamo. He was a Bowie.
No, but that's what I'm called, Kath Bowie.
Oh, right.
She's her own superstar.
You are your own superstar. You are indeed. Well, so we're led to believe, Kath, that there's nobody else like you, or very few people like you, but there is. There is lots of people your age, your stage, doing what you do.
Yes, there's not a lot that streams. Okay, Fortnite, but there's definitely plenty that plays. Any game, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be Fortnite. It can be any game.
So, Kath, how did you get started in all of this?
Oh, yeah, well, it's 7 years ago, actually. I walked into my teenage grandson's bedroom and just saw him playing what I now know, of course, and what I play is Fortnite. And that was the very first week that Epic had released it. And it was just really love at first sight.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Joining us in the studio, broadcaster Carol Malone, political commentator Jonathan Liss. Did you want to clarify something?
Yes, I do. You guys did clarify before. I said Alison was Jewish. She's not Jewish.
Yeah, that's right.
She's a big supporter of Israel. She calls herself philo-Semitic. But also I said that the actions by Essex police could have been anti-Semitic. Alison is not Jewish, although she says she's a big supporter of Israel and admires and defends Judaism.
OK.
So just wanted to make that.
Fine, OK.
That's all right.
Now, moving on.
Please to ban tractors from the farmers' protest, Jonathan. Why?
Because it's actually a crime to obstruct roads, and it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me that the same people who are going to be complaining about that are all in favour of Just Stop Oil protesters going down for 4 years when they blocked the M25.
Every Saturday we have a march by the people supporting.
Not with heavy goods vehicles.
No, they disrupt the traffic all the time.
Police,
every Saturday.
They are people. They are bodies. Police are in charge.
You have not been to the march, Jonathan.
Are in charge.
Central London for hours.
Not with tractors.
What's the difference?
Because one's a human body, the other's a tractor. That's the difference.
Never mind. One of them is about this country.
Yes.
One of them is not.
Yes.
That is my objective.
And let's talk about the farmers. This station is a huge supporter of farmers. In fact, I was stopped at the weekend by a bunch of farmers who thanked you guys for the support. But, you know, these people are the unsung heroes of this country. And yet they are being messed about by this government. You know, everyone knows what happened in the budget. Any farm over £1 million is going to have to pay inheritance tax when the owner dies. So these people are going to march. Now, they've been told they can't take their tractors because they can't block the highway. It's against the Highways Act. But as we just tried to point out, we know that many other organisations block the highway on a regular basis. But, you know, we know about farmers. They're not there to cause trouble. They're really not. They're there to save their livelihoods. They're there to save their farms. They're not going to be shouting in the street and punching people and all the rest of it. They're going to actually talk to the government and try and get the government to backtrack on this appalling inheritance tax. You know, the French farmers disrupt the country all of the time. And it's taken us away. But because the farmers in the country have never behaved like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's
But
not
now
true. The farmers'
they
protests...
They have never behaved like the French farmers, not
No,
ever.
not in like the
But
French
now
farmers,
they
but
have
there have been
to.
agricultural protests in this country for over many, many years.
Yeah,
The
but
Countryside
when was the
Alliance
last
used to
one,
go
Jonathan?
marching, the petrol,
Tell
the
me when
fuel
the last
protests.
one was.
Obviously not for maybe 20 years or
Yes,
so.
exactly.
But
That's
the point,
quite
look, the fundamental point is, I am very, very happy with people to protest for causes that mean something to them. I actually have an equal opportunities policy with that, and I just wish that the other side had the same policy, that when people go and protest, we just have clear, consistent rules that we apply for all those protests.
We do have clear, consistent rules, but they're not followed for certain groups, and that is the problem. And the
but
farmers,
how they were for Just
I
Stop
literally
Oil.
hope the farmers do bring the tractors in, because I would like to see the cops take this on, because we can then compare, we can then talk about two-tier policing. We can talk about the times that they've let the other protesters block the roads.
But Just Stop Oil literally went to jail. If the farmers went to jail, that would be the single-tier policing. Look, I think that people have a right to protest for political causes. They don't necessarily have the right to block highways for considerable periods of time. Now, do I think that people should go to jail for that? Absolutely not. And I would protest as vigorously about farmers going to jail for that as I did for Just Stop Oil going to jail. It doesn't matter, Carol. It's about the principle of a protest.
Yes, it is a principle of protest. And so why are the cops telling the farmers they have to limit their protest?
Because they're saying, no, they're not saying they can limit, they're saying they just can't bring tractors. That's all they're saying.
Johnson, do you suspect there's been a political input here? Because I do.
No. Absolutely not.
Can I just have a conversation before you disagree? I suspect there has been political involvement here, and it's the usual channels. A dispute like this with the tractors could look very, very damaging, a very bad optic for the government.
It's
because
against
it's food.
the law.
So very easy to say to the Metropolitan Police, just enforce the law, my dear, that highways can't be blocked.
That's
when
what
they
happened
do
with
not
Just Stop
do
Oil.
that, they do
They
not do
did.
that with the marchers. Every Saturday, central London is disrupted.
Jonathan,
roads are closed.
We have seen Just Stop Oil protectors stopping ambulances get through, stopping.
And they've been
police
arrested,
cars
Carol.
getting
They've been arrested.
I'm sorry, they haven't always been arrested. They have said this is their legitimate right to protest. So here they are. The cops are putting provisos onto the farmer strike. Now, I literally hope the farmers do come into London with some tractors.
I do.
I really do.
Look, I think that the principle of a protest is that everyone has the right to protest in this country, despite the last government's attempts to. No, but the farmers, if the farmers are just going with their own sort of strength and their own and it's negotiated with police and liaised with police in the way that all protests have to be, then I have absolutely no criticism whatsoever.
Do you feel sorry for the farmers?
I do. Look, I'm in an invidious position as a political commentator here that I can see both sides of this argument. I can see that you have multi-billionaires like James Dyson who have used this loophole to buy farmland that he's not necessarily going to farm so he can avoid inheritance tax. I think that needs to be clamped down on. And I can also see the claims of the farmers who are there to feed this country who are now going to have more taxation. And I think the government there's a middle ground here.
The farmers are justifiably angry that, you know, the Palestinian protesters have been allowed to march in the streets and block the roads in this country for months and months and months. Very little gets done to them, and yet they are being threatened. Now, the Farmers Union have said they don't want to cause disruption or blockades, but what they have said, if this government wants a fight, well, then they've picked the wrong people. And what they've also said is, you know, if we choose to, we could block every road.
And also, James Dyson, by the way, is growing incredible organic food using phenomenal green technology in a way that other farmers are going to look to emulate. So he's not just swept up farmland.
I'm not saying he just swept up farmland. I'm saying that there are people who have used this loophole, because it is a loophole, in order to avoid tax. Now, the government has every right to clamp down on that. Could it have been done a bit better? I think it could have been done a little bit better. The threshold could have been higher. But I think it's legitimate for the government to claim tax that other people have to pay. I'm sorry.
Very briefly, of course, the government says it will only affect 500 farms. Why do they think that's OK? Do we really want to lose 500 farms? That's a lot of food.
I think that Andrew, we've had this conversation.
Farmers say it's more like 5,000 farms.
Well, I think I read one thing that said it was 20 farms. So obviously there's a dispute over the figures. I do think it's fair that the government should claim tax, and no tax is going to win a popularity contest.
This man is called Pete Hegseth. If you're listening on the radio, this is an extraordinary image of him before he was appointed Defence Secretary in the Trump administration. Now, just watch this. If you're listening on the radio, he's throwing an axe over a target.
In a rural location, sorry, an urban location. It looks like New York City. It looks like New York City.
It goes straight over the bullseye and wallop. It hits a ceremonial drummer in the arm. He might not have been a drummer for much longer.
Oh, dear God.
It is extraordinary. He's now in charge.
Oh,
He's now in charge of the defence.
Has he got his finger on the button and everything? I don't know.
Also, a man who preaches family values with Trump and has had affairs with each of his wives and married the next one.
Steady now, steady. Now, but what he's doing, Garrett, he's going outside the establishment.
Quite right.
Yes, he is.
He's got Musk doing bureaucracy.
Great appointment.
And Vivek Ramaswamy, very successful.
A Fox News presenter who's an ex-military. He was in the military armed forces for many years. I think it's a breath of fresh air.
I think it's a breath of fresh air, and I just love how, you know, the left are, you know, apoplectic and foaming at the mouth about every single appointment he makes and everything he does.
That's not
true.
true.
I love it. Oh, yes, they are.
No, that's not true.
Can I talk? Last week, I just thought it was hilarious in this country to watch the hysteria of the left, you know, the Emily Bayless, the Alistair Campbell. They can't stand it, you know, because they were all predicting days
How are you
before.
feeling about it?
Well, I'm feeling. Well, I'll tell you what I'm feeling. Thank you for that cynical remark, Carol. I'll tell you what I'm feeling, Bev. I'll tell you what I'm feeling. You asked me the question. I'm feeling very, very sorry for the people in America who are going to suffer as a result of the choices that people in America have made.
How are they
That's who I feel sorry for. I feel sorry for people who thought that the economy was going to improve, who now see that things will get even more expensive. I feel sorry for minorities who will be under attack for the next 4 years. I feel sorry for women who are going to face increasing curbs on their right to choose, their right to autonomy over their bodies, and I feel sorry for people in law enforcement who are going to be governed by Matt Gaetz, who was the subject of a major inquiry over sexual misconduct himself, and now Trump has appointed him Attorney General. So I feel sorry for all these people.
And I am going to make sure we clip that and we show it in a year's time when America is flying.
When
America's great again, Bev.
One of the most significant commercials in the election was they showed a frozen chicken from 4 years ago, $10. Frozen chicken, 4 years later, $20.
Can we also point out the reason?
Yeah, and I wonder what it'll be like in 4 years.
Is because the Guardian editor. What's the name again? Anyway, she sent an email around asking them all if they needed a little bit of support and counselling. And today, the Guardian has now banned the staff from using X because they think it's toxic because of all the stuff that's going to come up through Trump. So they've actually banned their staff from using X.
Now, doesn't that tell you they believe in free speech?
Yeah.
And open communication and dialogue. That's the
work with Beverly Turner for
I think she might have to be in the queue ahead of you.
What about counselling IJ for coming on this show every week?
She might be first in the queue for that.
Oh, I love it. You know I love it, Andrew.
Carol, Jonathan, thank you so much. Let's go to Katie Bowen. She's got your headlines.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Some brief breaking news this morning. A 60-year-old woman arrested on suspicion of manslaughter following the deaths of 3 elderly people at a Swanage care home has been released from the investigation without charge, Dorset Police has said. Dorset Police said that the deaths of 3 residents, 2 men aged 74 and 91, and an 86-year-old woman are still being treated as unexplained. 7 people were also taken to hospital as a precaution, and the property was evacuated following the incident last month. Some more breaking news now. Law enforcement agencies in the UK, Belgium and the Netherlands have arrested a major supplier of small boats and engines to people smuggling gangs. The suspect, a Turkish national, was arrested after arriving at Amsterdam airport. Dutch authorities plan to extradite the man to Belgium to face charges of people smuggling as part of an organised criminal operation. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said this major investigation shows how important it is for our crime-fighting agencies to be working hand in glove with our international partners to get results. Elsewhere, the Chancellor is expected to use her first Mansion House speech today to outline reforms to pensions, telling city bosses she has a plan to boost the economy. Rachel Reeves will reportedly propose an overhaul of Britain's pension fund industry by introducing pension megafunds that could help unlock £80 billion worth of investment in businesses and infrastructure. Under the plans, the reforms will be introduced through a new pension schemes bill next year. Megafunds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds invest in assets that have a higher growth potential, the government said. Pensions Minister Emma Reynolds outlined the plans earlier on.
Pensions Minister, let me be absolutely clear that it is these 2 objectives that I'm holding in my mind all the time, which is boosting investment in our own economy, but at the same time boosting pension savers' retirement incomes. This is a win-win situation.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's get your finance report.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2635 and €1.2027 euros. The price of gold is £2,051 and 81 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 at 8,052 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up at noon, good afternoon, Britain, with Charlie Peters and Miriam Kate this afternoon. This is a nice pairing. Haven't seen this before.
It's a debut.
It is, yeah. Marvellous. What are you going to be talking about this afternoon?
Go on, Miriam, what are you leaving?
Well, we've got a story from a school in Sheffield College, that have introduced a gender budget to buy clothing for children who identify as trans and non-binary, to help them with their clothing and makeup. We'll be discussing whether this is just...
How old are these kids?
Well, it's a sixth form college, so 16, 17, 18. But we'll be discussing whether this is just a bit ridiculous or whether actually it's a little bit more sinister. Is this a safeguarding risk that a college is supporting these ideas?
Especially in light of the CAS review and all those developments this year, so that'll be interesting. We're going to also be reflecting on calls for the D-Day beaches to be marked as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The French now pushing for that move to be solidified. We had some calls for that earlier in the year, before the 80th anniversary. Maybe it would have been nice if that's been done by then, but they're still going for it now. That's a renewed call for that.
Very good.
And we'll be carrying on talking about the plight of farmers. Obviously, the inheritance tax change in the budget.
They can't bring their blooming tractors in. It's political.
Exactly.
Don't you think it's political?
Well, it does seem to be, given everything else that's allowed to be brought onto the streets of London. But it isn't just the inheritance tax changes. There are other changes that have been made in farming by the Labour government and the previous government that are making it increasingly difficult to farm. So we'll be looking at that.
And one more we'll be really focusing on is this free speech row that is just running on. Allison Pearson and those issues with those non-crime hate incidents. Some new developments today, particularly over a proposed meeting with the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. This could be, I think, one of those events that kind of bursts the dam on all these censorship issues. Finally, this is mainstream. This is front page coverage of police censorship.
They've picked the wrong person,
They have.
haven't they?
Absolutely.
They really have, because she's a great hero. She was a great art voice as well in the Brexit debate too. She really was.
And we'll hear from some other people who have suffered at the hands of this regulation.
And if you look how the dial on free speech is changing in America now under Trump, then actually this could be the tipping point.
Because I think a lot of people, especially people who don't spend their life on Twitter or who aren't particularly political, didn't really believe this was happening or thought these were the extreme cases. So I think these cases are very, very helpful to make people believe that it's real.
Can't hide from it now.
Miriam and Charlie will be here for
a good one.
Now, in just a minute, find out why action by frustrated pharmacists could impact you when you pick up your prescriptions. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Quite a bit of cloud around today, but some places having a fine autumn day with some sunshine. Most areas, again, not seeing much in the way of rain, and the winds are fairly light. Changes are on the way as we go into the weekend. But for the time being, a mixture of sun and cloud, some of the sunniest skies across parts of eastern England and central and eastern parts of Scotland. Further west, quite a lot of cloud, but even here, some breaks are possible, particularly this afternoon. Bit of drizzle on the south coast this morning, that's clearing away. We may see some spots into northwest Scotland, but say most places dry. Temperatures, well, around or a touch above average, feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine, 11 or 12 Celsius. Some breaks in the cloud developing across the northeast of Scotland, allowing things to turn quite chilly quite quickly here this evening. But in the west of Scotland, we're always going to keep quite a lot of cloud as we go through the evening and overnight, staying pretty cloudy too for Northern Ireland. Some breaks in the cloud further south will again allow those temperatures to drop away. Maybe still a little bit of light rain and drizzle along the south coast for a time this evening, but that should scoot away. And then in the southwest, parts of South Wales, we should have some lengthy clear spells, which will allow temperatures to fall down to freezing and could also allow some fog patches to form, which may be slow to clear. Pockets of frost also possible across northeast Scotland, maybe northeast England too, but generally staying too cloudy over southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. 2 or 3, that's in towns and cities, but in rural spots in the south, we will see those temperatures dipping down to freezing or a touch below, and some maybe stubborn fog patches through parts of Somerset in particular tomorrow, which could take quite a while to clear away. Thicker cloud over northwest England tomorrow, some drizzly rain and wet weather coming into the northwest with a strengthening wind. But for many, it'll be another dry day, a little cooler. Temperatures, though, still around average at 10 or 11 Celsius. This weather front is going to mix things up. Band of rain coming into the far northwest later tomorrow. As that slips south through this weekend, it's going to turn colder for all of us.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:40. This is Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So fewer pharmacies could be open in the evenings and weekends from the new year because they're voting in favour of collective action for the first time in their history.
Some could even start withdrawing emergency contraception and stop smoking services, or anti-smoking services, we should say. We're joined now by pharmacist and chairman of the National Pharmacy Association, Nick Kay. Nick, we'd like to think we've been very supportive of pharmacies and community pharmacies and independent pharmacies on this programme. This is clearly a sign that you've been pushed to breaking point by successive governments over the failure to heed what you've been saying about the lack of financial support.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you, and thank you for covering this story. And I would absolutely agree with that. And you've highlighted that point really, really well, because actually the NPA is 103 years old. My grandfather and father are pharmacists, or were pharmacists, and they would never expect to be in here. You know, this is really born of a frustration that we think we are vital for the communities we serve. We believe that we can be a really important part of delivering people's health and their medicines. And actually, you know, for over 3/4 of our members and 99% of those to vote in favour of doing this is just a huge message of frustration. And frustration really is the word, because like I say, we think we can do so much more if some of this was just sorted out.
The knock-on effects of this, for instance, if patients need prescriptions and they can't get there, where will they go for their drugs?
So that's a really important point. Like I say, what we're asking our members to consider, and they voted in favour of considering, is dropping back to 40 hours a week, which is what actually is required for an NHS contract. And for independent pharmacies, you know, 90% of our income comes from that NHS service. So it will be, as you say, a reduction in things like opening hours later or weekends. And we're already seeing some people having to take these measures with really heavy hearts. You know, this is the hardest thing as a frontline practitioner I've ever had to sort of suggest or try and lead our organisation through, because we don't want to do this. And, you know, where I practice in Cornwall, you know, sometimes, you know, it's a 15-mile drive to access medicines, because people are having to look at this already, not down to the core 40 hours yet, but some people are having to try and reduce those hours now just to keep the lights on. And the worry is that if we don't do something like this now, we won't exist at all. So there's short-term pain for longer-term, we hope, gain. And to be really clear, we don't want to do this. You know, I don't want to do this in January. I don't want, you know, our members don't want to do this. We want to find a solution through, because we actually think we can be a key to you know, helping people access healthcare in a better way.
OK, all right, thank you so much. Nick Kay there, Chairman of the National Pharmacy Association.
How has it got to this?
They've been so neglected.
103-year history.
They've been so neglected. And it's partly the fact that the drug companies are charging so much now for the medication that the pharmacists are having to buy, and the government are not then reimbursing them the full amount. It is complicated, but, you know, we just wish them luck.
We do. Now, up next, the John Lewis Christmas advert has been released a bit too early for my liking this morning. Do you care? Watch the full thing in just a moment and we'll give our review. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
On the 8th of October at Battersea Arts Centre, a new orchestra launched its inaugural season. The orchestra, which is named Chromatica, is formed of some of the best young musicians in Britain. They're due to perform in traditional venues and in community spaces. The aim is to bring their youth and dynamism to a wide repertoire of music. Predominantly, they'll work with emerging conductors who will have the chance to shape the orchestra and its repertoire. To share her experiences of bringing the ensemble together, I'm joined by the violinist and Chromatica Orchestra lead, Maren Bosma. To what extent is this novel? To what extent is this new ground?
Well, new ground, it is new ground in a sense that this is a completely new orchestra. Obviously, in the current sort of cultural climate, it's not really easy to set up a new orchestra. And so, in that sense, it's a novelty for us to kind of try and carve out our space in the current climate of musical orchestras and musicians in Britain.
Yes, I mean, it's quite odd in a way to think of a new orchestra because the ones that we have tend to be struggling and numbers indeed have been reduced. I used to be associated with an orchestra which unfortunately went under. You've got some private backing for this.
Yeah.
Why do you think the private backers have been willing to give you support? What is it that they see as your unique selling proposition?
Well, Chromatica Orchestra essentially is an early career orchestra. So we're formed of all sort of top musicians who've graduated in, say, the last sort of 5 to 10 years. Because everyone is of that generation, there is a sort of enthusiasm and dynamism that we bring to the stage I think is quite unique. The orchestra's mission, it's really focused on creating opportunities for young emerging musicians.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, it's John Lewis Christmas advert day. We haven't seen it yet. We're about to watch it now. Here we go. We'll tell you what we think. Here it is.
What are you looking for? Something for you. You're not going to find it.
No, not here.
I don't want to go.
I want a nose ring. Sorry. Is there a politician? What? Who's coming? This is happening. Everything's going to be fine. He's healthy. He's amazing. But he's a boy.
Yes. No, come join us.
I can't.
This is mine. What's your problem? It doesn't even look good on you. Get out of my room. And you still haven't even found me dead.
You actually get it.
Stop this, please.
Oh.
So long. You.
Oh, I like it. It's like a little walk down memory lane.
Did you notice one thing?
Go on.
No men in it at all.
Oh, have you gone woke on me, Andrew Pearce?
No, I just that's got
You with your DEI, always looking through the prism of who's being represented.
To be fair, women do most of the Christmas shopping, don't they?
Well, quite. And the cooking, and the cleaning.
They do. It's Christmas is
and the hosting.
A lot of work for women.
I think it was lovely, and do you know what I liked about it? It wasn't woke. It wasn't deliberately trying to be anything in terms of the kind of the DEI pressures. It was maybe a little sexist against men, Andrew Pearce.
Oh, I wasn't objecting. I just noticed it. I thought, oh, no blokes in it.
You know what? I have two daughters with about the same age gap as they, like 2 years, and I was thinking, don't make me cry, don't make me cry, don't make me cry. It didn't make me cry.
I think some people will cry.
Yeah, it's nice. It's just about, you know what I like? It's about family, it's about history, it's about...
But that's what Christmas is about.
Nostalgia. That is what Christmas should be about. Well, I liked it, and I like even more the fact that John Lewis was playing GB News in their audio-visual department on Oxford Street this week. If you're watching, we do know. Thank you. Right, let's see what you've been saying.
It's where I do all my Christmas shopping.
Yeah.
Lewis.
Yeah, me
all under
too.
one roof.
Everything. Aileen has said, that could be a tagline, that. Aileen says, I liked it, the John Lewis advert. Megan said, dreadful music, no men, stupid story. It was Richard Ashcroft. It was The Verve, of course, a proper 90s soundtrack. And Brian says, it's definitely not a Christmas advert. No Christmas spirit, only depressed journey. No Christmas music, nothing to look twice at. I'm disappointed. They now all seem to take Christmas advertising away from a traditional Christmas. I think it was quite a traditional
Christmas. That's the whole point about this John Lewis ad. It always provokes a great debate. Is it Christmassy enough? Is it traditional enough? But it is, as you say, very family-orientated, and isn't Christmas about family?
Yeah, and it is, and they like the fact that it takes through the clothes. She was like the Narnia Chronicles.
Through the wardrobe, yeah.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. C.S. Lewis,
by the way.
Bag Lady has got in touch and said C.S. Lewis was a committed Christian all his life. Well, he would have been like it then, wouldn't he? Right, well, thank you so much for joining us this week. I think that is it.
Yeah. We've had a good week, but lots of people been watching and listening in record numbers again, which we're very happy about.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We never take you for granted.
No, we never do.
And don't forget, it's the King's birthday today, so there's going to be a 62-gun salute.
Oh, yeah. That's coming up in just a minute. Here's your weather, though. We'll see you Monday.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, some bright spells in the south and the east, but generally cloudier weather for many, and it's going to be increasingly dull and damp in the far northwest. Northwest Scotland, Western Isles, into parts of Northern Ireland as well. We'll see some low cloud gather, some spots of drizzle. Elsewhere, increasingly cloudy skies spread south, but actually after a chilly start in the south, it's going to be a bright enough afternoon, just with some variable fair weather cloud floating about, 12 or 13 degrees in the south, 12 or 13 equally in the northwest, but a very different feel with a lot of low cloud and drizzle. In fact, it's increasingly damp in the northwest of Scotland through the evening, a lot of low cloud covering the hills, some mistiness around the coasts as well. But a contrast for eastern Scotland with that low cloud breaking up over the hills, so some clear spells for Aberdeenshire into parts of Fife, for example. Northern Ireland, likewise, some low cloud and drizzle for the north and west, brighter or at least clear overnight for the south and the east. The south of England, the south and east of Wales, most likely to see clear spells overnight, and as a result, again, temperatures are going to fall away with some frost and fog patches forming by dawn. It's not going to be a chilly start, though, for the northwest, where those spells of rain and drizzle continue, and first thing Friday, 10, 11 Celsius in Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, whilst we'll be looking at the low single figures in the far south of the UK. Some fog patches will continue through the morning in the south, but Actually, for many across South Wales, through parts of the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East, it's going to be a bright day once again with sunny spells. But in the far northwest, increasingly damp and wet weather coming through with gusty winds. That's a weather front that's starting to sink south, which will introduce colder weather for the weekend.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag will get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring.